Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the Haworth College of Business Entrepreneurship Forum. I'm Samantha Hooker, a marketing specialist at the college, and I'll be serving as the host today. Before we get started, I'll explain the format and overview. Satish Deshpande, Dean of the Haworth College of Business, will introduce our speaker, Jarrett Blackmon. His presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. Please use the Q&A or chat feature to enter questions as we go. And with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Satish Deshpande.
I'm sorry, it took a few seconds to unmute myself. Good morning and welcome. I'm Satish Deshpande, Dean of the Haworth College of Business. Thank you for joining us today. Our sponsor for this event is Blue Ox Credit Union. I thank them for their dedication to this college and to supporting businesses in our West Michigan community. We are delighted to have Jarrett Blackmon with us this morning. Jarrett started the cosmetic brand Damn Handsome Grooming Company from his kitchen and scaled it up to national distribution within 1 year, including major sales in Urban Outfitters and Banana Republic. He is also co-founder of the Brand Flakes podcast and Corner Store Cocktails. He has been featured in Forbes, the New York Times, and BBC. Thank you for joining us today, Jarrett. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I would just like to thank everyone at the Western Business School for having me, and all of you guys for getting up this early and sharing your Friday morning with me. So I think what I'd just like to do, I have some images. I'd like to just kind of tell my story, my journey, and then open it up to just have any questions come through. Whether they're small business related, whether they're entrepreneur related, or I guess beard related, anything. So let me share my screen here and tell you a little bit more about who I am. Bear with me here. All right. Can everyone see? Great. So we kind of have a running joke about Damn Handsome Grooming Co. that it was all started over a bunch of beer. And that is actually 100% true. In 2013, I was working for a marketing company, big marketing company, had a great office overlooking Lake Michigan, and overnight, the company shut down completely. And I was left high and dry, not knowing what to do. So I spent a lot of time at a local brewery, updating my resume and trying to figure out my next steps. And while I was there, I noticed that these huge tubs of something were being taken out from the brewery and thrown away. And so after a few days of seeing this happen over and over and over again, I finally asked the bartender, I said, what is in this tub? Or these multiple tubs that are being taken out? And he said, well, that's spent grain. I said, oh, you just throw it out? And he told me about the whole process. And it turns out about 90% of everything that goes into brewing gets thrown away, or in some best cases gets donated to, farmers for livestock or things like that. But I thought, that seems like a waste, and it seems like there has to be something to do with that. And I was looking for really any excuse to postpone or procrastinate my resume update. So I went home and started Googling a bunch of spent grain stuff, and one thing that came up was this article about early Egyptians taking beer baths and how it was so good for their hair and their skin with the B vitamins and riboflavin and sugar from the beer. And so I dug a little bit deeper to see if that was still present in the spent grains once they had gone through the brewing cycle. And it turns out it was. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder if I could make soap out of that. And there was no one in the US doing that. There was only one tiny company in Ireland making it with Guinness beer, not with spent grain, but just with bottles of beer. So I decided to take my stab at making soap. And the first batch was awful. It smelled so horrible. It stunk up our apartment. People thought I was going crazy because I had just lost my marketing job and here I was making soap in my kitchen. But I still thought that there was something there. So I kept trying and kept trying. And a few batches later, I had something that I actually thought was pretty good. People still thought I was crazy, but I thought it was pretty good. And I decided to take it to the great equalizer, which is the farmer's market. So I took it to the farmer's market here in Kalamazoo, not knowing if anyone would like anything called beer soap, if they would think I was crazy like all my family did. So I set up this little rickety stand at the farmer's market. I think I have a picture of it right here. That is the first stand. It looks pretty crude. But I set that up and, you know, it's really early in the morning. It's about 6 o'clock. And by 10, I was completely sold out. So I thought, well, that's kind of a good problem to have, but this is also something that a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners have. And I like to call it the oh shit moment. So you sell out and you go, oh shit, now I have to go and make some more stuff. And so we did. And pretty soon we had someone ask to carry it in their store and you go, oh shit, now I have to learn how to wholesale. And then we get an email from Martha Stewart and her team loves the soap. And all of a sudden we're nominated for a Martha Stewart award. And it's like, oh shit, how do we figure that out? And then that fall, I got an email that completely changed the brand's course. And I remember it really specifically because we were still packing up our home office. We were making everything still out of my apartment kitchen. And we were getting ready to move into our first office at the Park Trade Center. And an email came in from a guy claiming to be the assistant to the creative director for Banana Republic. And he wanted to know if I could hop on a call with him that day. And of course I said yes. I mean, when you're first starting out, you say yes to everything, for better or for worse. And I honestly, to tell you the truth, didn't even know if this was a real email. I didn't know if this is a real guy, a real company that he was, you know, representing. But I hopped on a call and immediately I was connected with the then creative director of Banana Republic, Marissa Webb. And she had heard about us because one of her employees had gotten a gift of our beard oil and our soap, and she absolutely loved it. And she was opening up a flagship store in New York and wanted to really curate a lot of sustainable and artisan products and asked us to be in their store. So we were thrilled. We had a ton of press around that. And the launch of the store went very, very well. And that fall, one store all of a sudden turned into 200 stores for the holiday season. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen like pallets of stuff being delivered. But there I was at the Park Trade Center loading dock, watching all these pallets of empty bottles and jars and oil and wax and all this stuff just being unloaded. And I was just thinking, oh shit, now we have to fill all of this stuff. So that holiday season was absolutely crazy. Not only were we in 200 Banana Republic stores, we were also cultivating all these other relationships that we had built with local stores and boutiques all across the country. And emails kept coming in. We were featured in the New York Times. We were featured in Forbes. And then Urban Outfitters came calling, and we had to tack that at the back end of a huge holiday season. And this was our second holiday only. So it was crazy. But by the time we were in Banana Republic and Urban Outfitters, we were no longer this little kind of boutique skincare brand. We were a fully functional national cosmetic brand. We were in about 500 stores. We went from me in a kitchen to myself and my wife and 4 employees. We had to upgrade an office just for the Banana Republic order. And we were off to the races, and we hit it hard ever since. And then I got another email in 2017, which was very interesting. And it was from Facebook. And they wanted to know if I would come and speak at an event in Kalamazoo. Of course, I said I would. I had no idea what we were going to be speaking about. We hadn't spent $1 in Facebook advertisements, and we were there to talk about Facebook ads. But I went to the event, and it was a very successful event. And then they asked me if I would be interested in interviewing for something. I didn't know what that something was. And I think if there are any small business owners out there or entrepreneurs out there, they can probably relate to this, because a lot of times you get an email or a phone call and they ask you to do something, you don't know exactly what it is. So you kind of walk in blind every single time. But I walked into the interview on the phone. I shouldn't say I walked in, it was a phone interview. And they asked me to tell my story. They asked a lot of questions, and they said, great, we'll get back in touch with you. And about a week later, I got an email saying they would like me to be part of the Facebook Small Business Council, which I had no idea what that was. But the Small Business Council is a very small group of small businesses that works in tandem with Facebook. And Facebook tries out new products with small businesses, and the small businesses gives Facebook feedback on that. And we're able to share all this information with our community and other businesses who are looking to use Facebook as a tool for marketing. And one of the really cool perks is they fly you out every year to Palo Alto, to the Facebook headquarters, and you get to spend a week out there just troubleshooting anything and everything. So that was a very unique situation, and I was very happy and very honored that our tiny business was a part of that. And then after our first year of the Facebook Council, Facebook asked me to go on a speaking tour to big marketing agencies in New York and Chicago and tell our story there about how social marketing has impacted our business and how it's been a helpful tool. And then from there, the pandemic hit. This was right before the pandemic. And fortunately, we were a business that wasn't really impacted greatly by the pandemic. Since we are an online business, our online sales actually surged. And we were able to make the most of it. I got a phone call from my friend who owns a distillery. He asked us if we can help him with some hand sanitizer. So we ended up pivoting and doing hand sanitizer for a few months. And then we were hit with another roadblock, which was supply chain issues. Holiday was coming up. We couldn't order jars. We couldn't order candles. We couldn't order anything. So instead of freaking out, we pivoted again and changed up some packaging and made the holiday work. Also during the pandemic, I started another company with some friends. And this was started because much like Damn Handsome, there was a problem and we wanted a solution. And our problem was we couldn't go out to a bar, and we would just go to a local store, and we were sick of everything that we had seen. We had been in the pandemic for quite a while and didn't want any more craft beer, didn't want to learn how to be a bartender. So we figured we would start a canned cocktail company. And we launched that the beginning of this fall. And we were slowly rolling out to local markets here. And then we're also rolling out to Brooklyn, Texas, and California by the end of the month. So it's been a crazy journey. And I would really love to open everything up and answer any questions that I can, whether they're business related or otherwise.
Okay, Jarrett, we have a couple questions coming in, and feel free to post more as we go. Okay, so one of the first questions is, how did you talk your wife into going along with this plan?
um, that is a good question. She's always been really supportive, and I think once she saw the wholesale account starting to come through, she realized that it was an actual thing. And it just so happened that she was pregnant while we were going through our whole Banana Republic growth. And we had our son actually the week that we shipped out all of our pallets. So she was on maternity leave, and then just never went back.
Okay, and it sounds like you obviously had to scale up quickly. So how
Yes.
did you how did you handle funding and arrange for funding as you grew that quickly?
So funding has and always will be an issue. I feel like we didn't raise any capital in the beginning stages. We didn't do a Series A. We didn't take on investors. We actually started the company with $200. And scaling up was one of the biggest challenges. Um, there's the not only the issue of taking on additional resources at that time, but most of the companies that we were dealing with, and I think this goes across all areas, is they do either net 60, net 90, or net 120. So you're looking at really not getting paid for about 3 months. Um, so what we did at first, because we didn't have a choice, is we put everything on our credit cards, and we just prayed that it would all come back to us. Fortunately, it did, and ever since then, it's always been a one step forward, two step back situation. We've been approached by investors, and it just I'm not that kind of an entrepreneur. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that are very good at that. Um, but for us, I'd rather reinvest our earnings into the company than take on additional money that we haven't earned. That's not the case for some businesses that I know. Some take on investment, and it probably is easier. If I were to do it again, maybe I would do that. But yeah, we reinvested everything in the very early stages.
Okay. After your first success, how did you have to worry about companies trying to replicate your product? And if so, how did you protect yourself from that?
Well, one of the best things that I did early on was trademark our name. Um, and there has been a lot of replication, and it's come in two forms. One has been people really kind of piggybacking on our aesthetic, and it's not something that we invented, but there have been a lot of similarities, especially with some big box stores, which is the most disheartening because if it's another local store in another state and you see something that looks like you, then that's a lot more acceptable. If you walk into Target or something like that, um, that's a whole different situation. And then we've had people who have used our exact name or used fractions of our product, like damn handsome beard oil. And so fortunately, there's a great trademark attorney here in Kalamazoo that we've had to utilize and send cease and desist and things like that. The first few times things like that happened, I took it very personal, but I learned over the course of 9 years that it's going to happen. If it's any good, it's going to happen. And there are certain ways you can protect yourself and insulate yourself, and then there are certain things you just have to let go.
Okay. And could you tell us a little bit about your background, what you majored in school? Did you ever see yourself being an entrepreneur someday?
So I majored in psychology. It's a family business, and I honestly thought that that's what I was going to do. But after college, I just wasn't ready to get into it yet, so I kind of bounced around, and I actually ended up in a recruiting job, just to kind of bide the time. And this was, I'm going to really date myself here, but this was probably like 2002. And what I started doing at that time to recruit people was use social media, because I was mainly recruiting at universities. And this was when Facebook was established, but people weren't really using it for business. And very quickly, I realized that that is something that I like to do. So I really focused on marketing, and eventually broke out as a freelance social media marketer, and then went to a couple different agencies. And then when my agency closed down, I think I had had enough of working for somebody else, and I just wanted to do something that was my own.
Okay. And there's a question that kind of branches off that. You have a marketing background. Obviously, you've owned a small business. The question is, how can small businesses with a minimal budget, minimal to no budget, how can they stand out in the social media world? I mean, that seems to be a great gateway to get word out about your product, but do you have any tips or suggestions?
Well, when we started Damn Handsome, the social media platform was very different. This is before a big algorithm change. This is where you could really make an impact with organic social media, which is what we did. And we were able to connect to a lot of businesses and people that we never would have had access to. That has changed now, as you know. Facebook and Instagram, they really are showing what you want to see. And it is more of a pay to play. However, I still think that you have connection, and you have direct connections to people that you couldn't go to a networking event and connect with. So my advice would be to find out who you want to be in front of, whose eyeballs you want on your brand or your product or your content, and actively follow them, actively engage with them, comment, like, keep at it. It's not a set it and forget it sort of strategy anymore. It's a constant follow up, follow through, follow through. And if you have a limited budget, you just have to put in the time. I don't think there's any secret recipe. It's just putting in the time and engaging. It's basically a networking event on steroids now.
Is there anything you would do different knowing what you know now?
Mm. I think what I think I would have asked for help earlier, and I would have with asking for help, I really think that I would realize what I'm good at in my role and what I'm not good at. You know, when you're first starting out, especially if you don't really have a partner or a team that you've established the company with, you're really doing everything, and you waste a lot of energy doing things that you probably shouldn't do. And I wish I would have realized that a lot sooner. You know, outsourced certain things, but I didn't, and I learned the hard way on a few things. You know, I'm not good at financing, for example, or certain compliance issues, and all those things can be outsourced at a certain time. And I held on to them for a little bit too long because this was my baby. Um, but yeah, that I think learning to ask for help is a big empowering thing for someone who is starting a small business, or even starting a project that is not necessarily a profit generator. Asking for help is a huge, powerful thing.
And again, this nicely just dovetails right off of that. What do you think the top qualities are for a successful entrepreneur?
Well, I think that there are lots of different types of entrepreneurs. There are entrepreneurs that they're very good at conversion. That's what they're good at. They're good at selling houses. They're good at monetizing things. There's some entrepreneurs that are in love with their product. It's a family recipe and they want to see it through. They want to bring it to the people. They want to go on Shark Tank. There are people who are entrepreneurs, which they just want to create something and get it out. And once it's out, they're on to the next thing. But I think all these people, what they have in common is they're solving a problem and they know how to solve that problem better than anybody. They can see around corners, and if they're, the longer that they're around, the better that they're able to do that. But I think that every entrepreneur I know can solve a problem, that specific problem, better than anyone else can.
What were some of the other names you considered before settling on Damn Handsome, and why Damn Handsome?
So I've actually only been asked this question a few times, and it's embarrassing. But I will be completely transparent. So the only other name I really, really remember was Stubble and Bubble, which is awful. Completely, we would never have gotten into any place with that name. I don't even know why that was a running name, but Damn Handsome came across because we have a dog named Samson, and he's got two kind of like running things that we call him. We say Damn Sam or Handsome Samson. And one day I was in our living room, and for some reason those two things fused together. And I asked my wife, what if we called it Damn Handsome? And she said, can you even put that on a small business thing? I said, oh, let's find out and see. And it turns out you can.
So is Samson a partial owner of this then?
No, he's not.
It only seems fair.
I know. Cutthroat that way.
Okay, let me see here. Sorry, I got distracted by the dog story. Okay. There are a lot of cocktail producers in the US, including some major brands. So how do you find space in this market?
Well, I think what I've learned, what's really happened over the last 10 years is every market has been saturated. 10 years ago, there weren't artisan brands like there are now. So I think first off, whatever next venture I did, it was going to be in a saturated market. But one of the things that myself and the other members of Corner Store Cocktails have figured out is that we were solving a problem for us. So it was really a selfish thing. And I think that's how a lot of entrepreneurs get their idea. They're looking to solve the problem for themselves. And for us, we think that there's a hole in the market for just straightforward drinks to go. You can buy a lot of things in the can, as the question refers to. But a lot of things either have probiotics or gut health things, or they're naturally essenced, or they just don't taste good. And we wanted to bring back something that's classic, that can go with anything, that everybody likes, that's just no nonsense. And we felt like we weren't seeing that out there. And it's resonated quite a bit with people, and we're excited for that.
Can you tell us some of the varieties of corner store cocktails that you have?
Well, right now, it's actually a very interesting thing. And I think it was a lesson for me in really listening to the market, because we, as with everything, it was backed up with the pandemic for our state liquor license. We're federally approved, but not state approved yet. So while we were waiting for this, the leadership board and I were thinking, how can we advertise this? How can we promote this? And I thought, well, what if we did a mocktail just for advertising purposes? And as soon as we put that out there, we had cafes interested. People who can't carry alcohol said, hey, we want a canned cocktail. Or I'm sorry, a canned mocktail. And so we thought, well, why don't we just do that run first. And we said, okay, well, what are some classic mocktails? And so right now we have the Shirley, which is a Shirley Temple. We have a Coquito, which is a classic take on it's a coconut rum. And then we're coming out with a lemon drop mocktail. And the cocktails are going to start with a rum punch and an old fashioned. And we'll see what 2022 brings us.
Okay. Um, how did you manage any fears that came up while you're starting these businesses?
That's a really good question. I don't think I really had, I mean, I didn't have that much to lose in the beginning because I was unemployed. My real fear, the first fear that I can remember was when we started bringing on an employee. And I just remember thinking, well, okay, this business is now responsible for their rent. And the only way that I could figure out to combat that fear was to work harder, to make everything a priority, whether it's um, the simplest order, making sure that is correct, that it's packaged nicely, that the branding is solid. I figured if I could check off every box and competently know that I did everything 110%, I felt like I was going to succeed.
How many employees do you have now?
Well, now the Damn Handsome landscape is a little different. Before the pandemic, I would say in about 2017, we made the decision to outsource our production to a lab and our fulfillment to a fulfillment service. So everything is done pretty much remotely. We handle the marketing and photography and design and all that fun stuff, and we do that all from our home office here. So it's just me and my wife. Before that, I think we had 5 employees, and everything was part-time, and there was a lot of turnover, and there was a lot of time being consumed trying to figure out how to run a team. And we decided that we weren't the best people to do that at that moment. And so fortunately, we found some great co-packers, organic labs, and things like that. And so right now, it's just 2 people.
Okay. And can you tell us some of the mistakes that you learned from during your time at Damn Handsome Grooming?
Yes. um, so going back to what I said earlier, I think the big mistake is not asking for help earlier. Um, there's also, there's a lot of things that I didn't know that I learned by doing. I didn't know how to set up a website. I didn't know about FDA regulations. I didn't know about lease terms when you're leasing a space. And I made a lot of mistakes and probably cost us a lot of money, but they're mistakes that I won't make again. And I think that that's okay. I think that unless you're a very savvy business person, all of this is new to you. For people like myself who never thought we would be a small business owner or an entrepreneur and kind of falling into this, I think mistakes like that are inevitable. The one thing that I think I have not done is second guess myself, and I think that's the most important thing for not making crazy mistakes.
Okay, and I want to let everybody know who's attending. If you are attending for Spurs credit, I just posted the link to Experience WMU so that you can get that foundational credit registered. Go ahead and click the link when this ends and it'll take you to that page. If you have any issues, you can email me at samantha.hooker@wmich.edu. And we have one last question, and Jarrett, it's a good one. So I think it's a good one to wrap up with. They want to know, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you, for Damn Handsome, for Corner Store Cocktails? What do you envision in the next 5 to 10 years?
That is a really good question. I've actually given this a lot of thought recently. with Damn Handsome, you know, the if there's anyone out there who follows skincare or anything like that closely, that landscape has really changed. It's really changed. So I think Damn Handsome has a place. I think it's going to stay about where it is. Our plan with it is to keep it going, to keep putting out quality product, but I don't think we will be introducing anything new. I think it's about right where it is, and we'll let the market decide in the next 5 years if it grows or shrinks or stays the same. With Corner Store Cocktails, our goal is kind of a lofty one, and that is to keep everything local. We have we've done everything ourselves. We took it away from a co-packer, and we are now canning and producing ourselves. And our goal really is to grow into a facility where we're able to do that for other Kalamazoo and West Michigan businesses. We learned a lot in the last 6 months or so, and we would like to be able to share that with other businesses. So the goal for that is obviously to grow the canned cocktail and mocktail line, but to also be able to offer canning services to businesses who maybe don't know up from down, or can't find a co-packer, or can't meet minimums. And we think that there is a need for that in West Michigan, and we hope that we can provide that in the next few years.
Thank you, Satish. I will pass it to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jarrett, for a fascinating presentation. Please join us